yesterday's attacks and other things.
The Department of War Studies at King's College London, an academic institution with strong links to the British security state, where a large number of British, American and European agents and defence analysts receive training. However, in a new investigation, Mint Press News has explored how the department acts as a school for spies. The faculty is filled with current or former NATO officials, army and intelligence officers to train the next generation of spies and intelligence officers. A 2009 study published by the CIA says how beneficial it could be to use universities as a means of intelligence training, noting that exposure to an academic environment, such as the Department of War Studies at King's College London, can add several elements that may be harder to provide within the government system. The paper, written by 2 King's College staffers, is essentially a request to the Central Intelligence Agency to send more of its recruits there. In 2013, former CIA Director Leon Panetta took time out of his schedule as the US Secretary to pay a visit to the Department of War Studies and expressed his deep gratitude to it.
It was 70 years ago.
One of King's College's most famous professors is Mats Birdal. Before joining the college in 2018, he was Director of Studies at the International Institute for Strategic Studies, IISS, a leading think tank in the world. The institute is directly funded by NATO and its member states, as well as by major weapons manufacturers such as Airbus, BAE Systems, Boeing, and Raytheon. In 2016, the IISS was the subject of a major scandal after it was found accepted £25 million from Bahrain. Today, IISS is a major player in the growing hostility towards China, Russia and North Korea. A number of other current Department of War Studies academics have held positions at the IISS as well. Indeed, King's College boasts that among the key benefits of studying there is its established links with the IISS. Another famous member of King's College's Department of War Studies is Professor Sir Lawrence Freedman. A powerful figure in British politics, Freedman contributed to the then British Prime Minister Tony Blair's speech in the year 1999, which he established the Blair Doctrine, according to which NATO could and should militarily intervene anywhere in the world to stop what they considered to be human rights violations. Whereas the institution takes great pride in promoting independent thought, there exists a significant overlap between the staff of the Department of War Studies and the halls of power of the British state. And the distributing point is that many of these faculty members are basically warmongers. Sir Malcolm Rifkind, visiting professor at King's College, for example, rejected the idea that the United Kingdom should use atomic missiles only as a last resort after being attacked. Instead, he believes and insists that also use them simply to deliver an unmistakable message of Britain's willingness to defend her vital interests. It is not just British officials who teach King's College students, however. Christopher Calendar, for example, has the experience of commanding a US task force in Afghanistan under his belt. The department also has a number of Israeli academics, including Ofer Friedman, who served as an officer in the IDF between 1999 and 2011, during which time it was carrying out some of its worst war crimes against Palestine and Lebanon. After leaving the IDF, Friedman became an arms dealer. In 2016, King's College also hosted a lecture by a former head of Shin Bet the Israeli secret police force. Whereas the War Department's teaching staff are a cause of concern, much of King's College academic output is even more disturbing and seems to be totally in line with that of NATO and weapons contractors. For instance, one study titled "A Benefit, Not a Burden: The Security, Economic and Strategic Value of Britain's Defence Industry" looks more like a press release from an arms manufacturer in which it praises the benefits of the arms industry, such as job creations for many people. While King's College gives an academic appearance to the national security state, Bellingcat, an investigative site in close cooperation with the college, provides journalistic one. This bunch of think tanks, academic reports and so-called investigative articles all cite one another as credible, independent sources when in reality they are all part of the same network promoting an agenda. Another troubling product of the War Department is the journalists it trains. A great number of the world's most prominent reporters, producers and presenters, representing many of the most well-known media outlets, including the New York Times, CNN and the BBC, are graduates of this London department. This fact per se raises serious questions about the links between the press and the national security state. Meanwhile, this British university has managed to attract from the other side of the Atlantic. Currently, there are 1,265 Americans enrolled, making up about 4% of the student body. After graduation, many of these students would attain powerful positions in major American media outlets. Andrew Carey, CNN's bureau chief in Jerusalem, for example, completed a master's there in 2012. His coverage of the latest Israeli attack on Gaza presented the apartheid state as responding to Hamas rocket attacks, rather than being the instigator of violence. Needless to say, the BBC, the British state broadcaster, is packed with the war's graduates. In the words of Matt Kennard, an investigative journalist for Declassified UK, it's an open secret that King's College London Department of War Studies operates as the finishing school for Anglo-American securocrats. So it's maybe not a surprise that graduates of its various military and intelligence courses also enter into a world of corporate journalism that exists to launder the messaging of these same security agencies. Such things highlight the disturbingly close links between the national security state and the press, which the public usually rely on to be a check on their power and to hold them accountable. Those journalists trained in such an environment are very susceptible to things the way their professors do, and perhaps they would be less likely to challenge their state power when the officials they are scrutinizing were their classmates or teachers. According to Oliver Boyd Barrett, Professor Emeritus at Bowling Green State School of Media and Communication, while it strikes me as very interesting that a single academic institution could play such a major role in the recruitment of pro-establishment activist intellectuals and delivery of the same to the media, it is not so surprising. Sad to say, rather than challenging power and the powers that be, many of the mainstream media just echo and amplify their messages, almost uncritically. The level of journalists have in the powerful was summed up in a recent tweet by former CNN White House correspondent Michelle Kosinski. As an American journalist, you never expect 1. Your own government to lie to you repeatedly, 2. Your own government to hide information the public has a right to know, and 3. Your own government to spy on your communications. It is not a good sign for a democracy and freedom of information when so many spooks, government officials, as well as journalists who are supposed to hold them accountable, are all friends and classmates. The worrying fact is that the Department of War Studies is just one part of this broad phenomenon.